Hey, everybody, we're going to pick up our conversation we started last week. So if you haven't listened to last week's episode, go back and listen to that episode, and then you can listen to this episode. This is part 2 of a 2-part series. I hope you enjoy.
Welcome to The Friday Habit with Benjamin Manley and Mark Labriola II.
The Friday Habit is for creators, entrepreneurs, and agency owners looking for actionable ideas on how to grow their business and be more profitable.
We'll pull from our combined knowledge of over 20 years and interview thought leaders that will inspire you and give you the motivation you need to kick your business into high gear. Buckle up. It's Friday.
As you know, like my family's pretty conservative Christian family, homeschooled and that kind of stuff. Well, my mom had gone to this church event where they did Jewish folk dancing. So there's in the Christian church, in certain churches, they celebrate Jewish culture because Christianity kind of came out of Judaism, and there's a lot of influence there, a lot of things like that. So there's certain parts of Christian churches that will kind of celebrate Jewish holidays as well because of that. And so she had kind of discovered some things, as far as different Jewish holidays and stuff. And there was this Jewish dance that she had gone to and she loved it. She did it with my sister, Krissa. Anyhow, so this is how the internet changed my life once again. My internet has big effects on my life. My mom asked me, this is when we were living in Virginia now. I was probably 14 at the time. She was like, "Hey, I'm looking for Jewish folk dancing nearby." I'm like, "All right, I guess I'll search this." It's like Alta Vista probably is what I was using or something. It was before
Netscape
Google.
Navigator.
I probably was. I don't remember, but so I just started searching around. Search at the time was not great, and I don't even remember. I think I searched for Jewish folk dancing or Messianic Jewish dance team or something like that, and I thought that was normal. I was, I was homeschooled. I was in Boy Scouts. I thought all those things were cool.
Yeah.
And so, here's just another thing. So I found a dance team about an hour away in Roanoke. Just found this one line on this website of a listing and a phone number. So my mom called it. She ended up going. My sister and her ended up joining this dance team, and it's about an hour drive each way to this city. So they would drive an hour there, hour back, like once or twice a week. Yeah. So like usually twice a week they would go to this. And of course I'm a guy. I'm not like, oh, I want to join. I mean, most guys are not like, I want to join a dance team.
I want to join a Jewish dance team.
So let's talk about the hierarchy here, right? So I'm homeschooled. I'm in Boy Scouts. I would get made fun of. The kids that are in Boy Scouts that get made fun of by other people if I was in a dance team. So I'm the least cool kid in the Boy Scouts if I join a dance team, right? So I
feel like if Boy Scouts are making fun of you and other homeschoolers, you've got a problem.
Yeah, exactly. But so my sister and mom joined, and I ended up going to one of the practices for some reason. I think there was an art conference in Roanoke, so I went with my mom and sister. And when I went into this church where they were practicing, I literally remember seeing Hannah, my wife now, seeing her, and like I instantly I felt like there was something different about her. I saw her and I was like, there's something like special about that girl. Like she was 13, I was 14, and I was just fascinated by her.
She was a girl.
She was a girl.
She was hot. You were 14.
Yeah,
it was like,
exactly.
There's something special about her.
Mark, I'm trying to make this romantic, okay?
Oh, yeah.
Hannah, if you're listening, you are hot, but it wasn't just that.
No, I agree with you because it's so funny because I feel like every time I would ask somebody like, how did you know? And they would they'd be like, you just know. I'm like, that's bull crap. Like I need some sort of scientific algorithm that I can like decode in order to be like, yep, this is the person I'm gonna spend the rest of my life with, And so, but it's so true because as soon as I saw my wife, Rebecca, it was like the same thing, like a dove ascended from heaven onto her shoulder. And it was like, she's the one,
Wow. That's awesome.
So anyways, you go to the dance troupe, not to, not looking for anything.
I was not interested, but I saw her and I was like, I kind of knew, I was like, man, like I'm going to have to join the dance team. Because I was like,
you leave all depressed because you're like, I'm going to have to join this dance team now.
I have to get to know this girl. The only way is to be like, yes, I would love to do Jewish folk dancing and travel from church to church dancing in silk costumes.
silk costumes, flowing
yes.
silk, blue and white.
No joke. For 7 years, I joined a Jewish folk dancing traveling dance team, and I was horrible at dance. But since I was a guy and no other guys would do it,
The pick of the
they let
litter.
me join. Yeah,
You're like the male cheerleader.
exactly.
It's like
basically.
it's like
So,
hey.
so I literally I traveled to, I don't know, 4 or 5 different countries for years dancing, and I got to know Hannah really well. Became really good friends. Became best friends, and eventually I told her I loved her, and she ran away from me. That's a story for another day. But eventually she came around, and we're married now. That's that's a little fun. That's probably another very formative thing of my, teenage years, was being part of a traveling dance team, because I learned how to publicly embarrass myself and not be scared anymore.
Yeah.
I mean,
just
at
going
that
out
point,
there.
At that
I
point,
like how you
it's not-
say like a dance team. It's like, this isn't MC Hammer or like, something like really cool. This dance team is like a Jewish traditional dance.
It's so interesting because I'm not Jewish at all, right? So it's like, at this point, I'm like, anyways.
Are you wearing like funny hats and like, I really want to see some like VHS
now looking
tapes
back, like with
something.
like different terminology, I'm like, was that cultural appropriation? I was like, probably, but I mean, basically, it was like the Christian ripoff version of Jewish dancing. It wasn't like super legit Jewish dancing in some ways, and I don't mean to disparage it. There's some good things about it.
Yeah,
and, I don't regret it at all, but I do think that it's also very odd, and I recognize that, and I think that. Also, I will say, so it's some Jewish folk dancing, but then some of it we did some like river dancing style stuff. We did some ballet, we did some jazz, we did some hip hop. So there was more than just that. But it was, the underlying theme was like messianic kind of,
That's what got you in the door.
Right.
That was like, you saved that best Messianic dance for the end, like grand finale. We're coming out Messianic in it.
Yeah, that's right. So I did that for years, and that taught me a lot too, for sure. But I mean, the main thing, I was there for Hannah, like 100%.
Yeah.
So that was a big part of my teenage years. Yeah, it's very, very interesting and kind of random, but
and it's interesting too, because it's not like it's not like a side hobby thing. I mean, especially since you homeschool, it's like this could really consume your life as far as.
It was
all the time you're spending traveling to continents and doing all this.
Yep.
I mean, that's just fascinating. So how long did you do that for?
So
14.
Yep. Did it this sounds like this is so funny. This sounds like one of those like biblical stories you'd hear, but I had to join the dance team and earn Hannah's love for 7 years. No, basically it was from 14 to 21. So we were in the dance team there.
Your schedule must have been so busy. Sorry, guys, I can't hang out. I've got my Jewish dance team. I've got Boy Scouts on Wednesdays. I got homeschool Friday school.
On the side, I'm building websites for my soccer team, and getting paid to build sites for my church or whatever. Right? Yeah, it was. Yeah, that's true. That's funny. But yeah, I learned a lot through it, and so I did. I guess, I was 21. Hannah and I quit a year after we were married, I think it was.
Why'd you quit? Was it just like there's a long, you won your bride.
Yeah. I mean, hey, I did my time.
You did your time.
No, we did keep doing it for a while. I knew it was important to Hannah, and I didn't dislike it. There are actually some things that I really think are fun about it too. And it just, at first, I would have never chosen to do that if it wasn't for Hannah. But it won me over to some degree.
Do you guys put on some like cool Jewish folk music Friday nights and take some shots of whiskey and then do some of your old dance moves in the kitchen?
Do that. Actually, literally, this happened about 2 weeks ago. Hannah and we put on some like 90s Christian music.
The
stuff we probably heard in youth group and all that, right?
Yeah.
And then for some reason, like one came on that reminded us of some of that, and so we literally like turned on one of the songs, and we hadn't literally danced it for 14 years. Instantly, we like knew all the moves, like no, and we literally danced it in the kitchen for about 30 seconds. We were like, we know everything by heart still. Like this will never leave our brains.
Oh, that muscle memory.
Yeah, it was crazy. Anyways, so you joke, but that actually kind of happened.
All right, so you're doing the Jewish dance thing.
Yep.
You
things you never expected to say.
No,
Yep.
never.
I'm doing that.
And you graduate homeschool, high school, right? You graduate Boy Scouts. You're like, hey, what's next? They're like,
Eagle
sorry,
Scout.
kid.
Yep.
Eagle
There's no
Scout's
more.
the end of the line.
Yep.
Are you depressed at this point? You're like, what am I going to do with my life?
No, I was excited because I wanted to get married. I never felt like, what am I going to do, really? I just kind of kept designing stuff, and I ended up going to school, actually here in town at Liberty University, went to school there. Hannah went to school there as well. So we got married. We were both in school. I was also doing some work. I did a lot of freelance on the side, and I was working at an agency part-time too. But I think this is partially because of being homeschooled, but also just my own personality. I did not do a good job in college. So I went to college I was not strategic at all. So I was actually pretty bad at like how to, and I think it's partially because of the flexibility of homeschooling. I wasn't used to like a classroom experience and things like that, or like a lot of structure. So when I went to college, I got distracted by other people. I didn't do my homework. And my approach was I will work as hard as possible to make one thing as awesome as possible that I'm interested in and forget everything else. You know what I mean? So I'm like all in on this one project. I'm like, this is going to be the coolest thing ever. Meanwhile, like my easy like quiz in English, like I don't even like go to class or something because I'm like so consumed with this other thing I'm doing. And so I actually like failed English 101 like 2 times until I found out I could CLEP out of it. And then I CLEPed out of it and got like a 90 something on my CLEP test. And like, oh, cool, good to go. Like, oh, that would have been smart. So I had no like strategy or like any way of being organized in my approach to school was my problem. And so anyway, I was just not very smart about how I spent my time in college in that way. So I went for 4 years, and then I was pretty close to finishing. I had a few credits left, but I just stopped because I was like, oh, I don't want to pay for it. So I'm just going to stop going to school.
So, I mean, could you go back?
I don't know. It's been a while now. I know like I checked probably like 5 years ago and I still had the chance to finish, but I was like, I don't know at this point, like what's
right.
like,
What's the point?
It's like, it doesn't really matter. And the funny thing is with the creative industry, I think your work matters way more than your degree.
100%.
Like so much more, and your personality, all that. And so it wasn't really needed, but I do feel like I do regret that I didn't finish it. I don't think at this point that it makes sense to do it just because I regret that, honestly.
Yeah.
But
I know
feel like
I know
I
it
didn't do
means
well.
I know it means something to some, like
Yeah.
the accomplishment of going to college and completing something. I know that means a lot to some people, but yeah, I'm definitely in the realm of like I didn't even go to college. I took a semester of community college and was like, this is not for me. Peace out. Like, and it was more of like me just putting myself into situations, like working really hard and learning as much as I could about something, and then kind of growing through the ranks by doing that. And so for me, it's kind of like I'm going to tell my kids, hey, unless you want to be a doctor or a lawyer or something that like really requires you to get an education, like go be an apprentice somewhere, like learn a skill. You think about stuff that is recession proof, even like some trade skills, I mean, you can make a great living being a plumber. The plumber in my neighborhood, man, he's got the fifth wheel and the diesel truck. His house is always pimped out. I'm like, and then he comes to my house and fixes a little pipe for like $350 an hour. I'm like, what the heck? Like, so I think that there's a lot of opportunity for people out there who just want to like work, and America is one of the greatest places where if you ever wanted to do your own thing, you could start your own business, and if you're good at what you do, you will be successful. I mean, I think there's no question about it. So
for sure.
But it's funny that you got so close to the finish line.
I know.
There, and then you just were like, I don't want to pay the $1,500. I'm out.
I know it's weird, but here's the struggle I had in school. This is what my mindset was. first of all, I wasn't good at balancing stuff. If I were to go back, I would be very strategic about like, what is the right amount of effort to put into each thing and be reasonable about it. Not let me go out on things I'm interested in and just like, forget the stuff I'm not. And I also had some issues, I think, emotionally where I felt so guilty when I didn't do something that I didn't want to face my professor and disappoint them that I hadn't done my assignment. Like I thought they cared that much, and that, so out of guilt, like I wouldn't go back and face my professors, which would make it worse. And then I felt even worse. And like, it was like a cycle. And I actually had to learn that with my freelance work too, even with my clients. I used to be really bad at that, where I would be like, oh yeah, I'll get this to you by whatever date. And then like, oh, that date would pass and I wouldn't reach out and tell them that I was behind on it, and then it's like, now it's really awkward because they're like, hey, where are you? Like, where's my project? So like when I was early on in my freelance work, that was an issue that I definitely had to work on. So,
and so while you were going to college, you were freelancing and working for an agency, or doing work at the school and stuff like that.
So here's the other mindset I had was I was working for an agency and doing freelance and going to school, and I would go to a class, and I had been doing design work for so long already, like being homeschooled and doing this stuff on the side, that I didn't feel like I was learning a lot in my design classes.
You
or like
knew
Photoshop.
more than your teacher.
I was helping the other kids in the class. Like, yeah, here's actually a faster way to do what he's talking about. Like, right. I mean, it sounds arrogant saying that, but it's just like the reality of the way it was. Like, and it was just
like I was a prodigy when it came to creative techniques. I could have taught that class with one eye closed.
Dude, but I was so bad at schools. It's funny because I'm like on the stuff that mattered. I thought mattered. I was like, oh, this is great. But the stuff that I didn't know how to do, like it did teach me a lot in the ways I didn't expect. You know what I mean? It taught me how important deadlines are. It made me some great connections with other people. I learned so much, but not in the way that I was supposed to learn. I learned the wrong things, but it was helpful. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but I basically was like, okay, I'm doing this work on the side. I basically could pay the school a ton of money to do work for them, or I could get paid to do the same exact work as freelance or agency work. I know that's not really how it works, but that's where my mind was. And I was like, okay, well, I would rather just keep working as agency more and doing less schoolwork and get paid to do it instead of paying to do it. So that's what I did. It's like very pragmatic. Like, okay, well, I'm doing the same work. I'm learning probably more doing this for actual clients than I am,
sitting in a classroom.
In my class. So I guess I'll just keep doing this.
What were your parents like during that time? I mean, did they encourage you to like, Ben, you should just finish, or were they like, yeah, man, do whatever you want to do?
I definitely think they wanted me to finish, especially my dad. He didn't push me super hard, but I could tell he was disappointed when I didn't focus or didn't do well in my grades and stuff like that. So yeah, I think if I could go back, I would definitely do that differently. But they were definitely kind about it, never held it over my head or anything like that. But I did always feel like I kind of let them down a little bit because they also did pay for a decent amount of my school. And I did do, like at the beginning, before I messed up my grades so bad, I was in the honors and stuff. So I got a lot of scholarships, which was great.
Oh yeah.
So I do feel like, I didn't really finish the way they wanted me to.
Did your sister go to college and get a degree?
Yes, she did nursing. Yep.
She made the family proud then.
Exactly. I'm just doing my best here. No, but I mean, it's funny because I know my parents now are proud of where I'm at and stuff. It's just like I didn't get there the way.
Traditional way.
Yeah, the traditional way. It's a different way, But anyway, that's the story of my life. But so there's college and all that. So then it came into like from college into, just working life. And I like to tell people like knapsack, a lot of stuff I know how to do is because I learned so many different ways not to do things from working at other companies. I did learn some really good things from other companies too. So not to say it was all bad, but all of the reasons that I think knapsack works well are because I had the chance to see other people's mistakes in other companies. And it really helped me like realize what I didn't want to do in my company.
Right. Yeah. So really it's about taking those life lessons and not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, but saying, all right, I may not have done this the most traditional way, but what things that I learn along the way can I then apply to what I'm doing? And I think this is for both of us is for me in Brand Viva, it's like I've worked for terrible bosses, and I've, always wondered, like, why is the business doing it this way or whatever. And so I try to be really cognizant about that within my own business to, it's like, I want my employees to be happy. I want them to enjoy their work and enjoy the job that they're doing, and so it's like, how can I do that?
Yeah, for sure.
And again, when you become the boss, it obviously becomes a lot more complicated. And then it's kind of like when you were a kid, your parents did certain things and you see so two-dimensional when you're a child and you're like, why are they doing this? Like, you get so frustrated, and then you grow up and you maybe have kids of your own, and then you start kind of seeing that three-dimensional view that your parents saw. And then you're like, oh, okay, I think that makes sense why they did X, Y, and Z. I think it's kind of the same thing as when you're an employee, you're like, oh, my boss sucks. Like, why do they do this? Or the company doesn't care, blah, blah, blah. And then you become a boss, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh man, I got to worry about payroll taxes and like, all these other types of things that go on. And it's like, all right, so I kind of understand why my other boss did this way, because we have to look out for X, Y, and Z and whatnot. So
yeah, for sure.
So yeah. All right. So college, you learned a lot, but didn't finish.
Yep.
And then, what's the jumping off point? I mean, you're working jobs, you're freelancing, you're doing a bunch of work for other people, making other people's pockets fat, and then what happened?
Well, yeah, let me talk about that a little bit, because I think that was kind of an interesting learning experience working for other small agencies. So I worked for one agency. The lessons I learned at the first agency I worked at was, we had such high overhead. It was kind of crazy. We had really nice offices and stuff like that, but I could always tell my boss was really stressed about money. And we had really highly paid developers, but we didn't really have a great plan to bring in business that I could see, like consistently. And that honestly, I worked there. It was a great job. I loved that job. Beautiful offices, great work environment, very kind people. But I remember, I worked there for about a year and a half, and then it came like Christmas time. Right after Christmas, my boss came to us and was like, didn't want to tell you guys, ruin your Christmas, but I'm going to have to let everybody go. I don't remember. I think we had a couple weeks or something like that.
Wow.
And, some other things were going on with him too. And, I knew that he was working more than 40 hours a week. And I think there were some other things involved too. But anyway, in the end, he ended up getting a divorce. And at the time, I think there was more going on than just this. But at the time, I attributed that to being so focused on the business,
Yeah.
And I think there was other things. But I took away the lesson of like, okay, first of all, like overhead is really stressful. Like try to keep your overhead as low as possible, because I saw firsthand those experiences of how that was. And secondly, don't, be a workaholic because your wife might want to leave you, or, whatever it might be. So that was kind of a takeaway from that. I did work at another agency. I won't even talk about one of those. There's one that's just like kind of, I only worked at a little bit. It was just kind of sketchy, and it made me basically think I don't want to be sketchy. And, and so there's this other one I worked at where I was paid as a contractor, and my boss would actually take in money that was for work other people had done, other freelancers working for him, and then pay me with it because I was his best designer. And then I found out later that other people weren't even getting paid on the team. I was the only one getting paid, and he was taking the money from everybody's work and paying me because he wanted me to stick around. And he, basically everybody I've worked for, their marriage has fallen apart. And so his marriage fell apart. He actually ended up leaving, and his young son and wife, he left for one of our clients that he fell in love with.
Oh, dang.
And literally left with a family minivan, and his wife had no vehicle, and he moved in to like live with this other person. So
in town?
He left town, and then after a few months, the house that they bought together burned down, and then they broke up. So yeah, wow. I know. It was kind of a disaster. Movie. Yeah, right. I mean, so basically, that was
you learned a lot of what not to do.
I don't exactly. It was so much of what not to do, but and then I ended up doing some freelance on my own. Over in between each one of these things, I kind of started little companies where it was like I kind of was halfway official. Like I did register a business license and I had a name, but like I started so many funny names. Back when I was a teenager, I had one called Blade Max Design was like my first idea as a kid. I like Blade Max.
I'm sure you spent hours on a cool logo.
Oh, it was so awesome. There was so much drop shadow and it was awesome.
Metallic letters.
Yeah, literally. It was great with a giant X. And then, like I filmed some wedding films and I had another thing called Echo Studios that I was doing. And so I had always like done these little iterations of tiny businesses. And each time I created one, it would be a little bit more official. So I usually think of Knapsack as my first company, but really I did do little like versions of little freelance companies over time that I was practicing with in between my jobs and stuff. Ended up working at Liberty University and being a lead designer on their web team for quite a while, like about 5 years. That's when I first had my first kid because I wanted something solid, something with health insurance, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So when Jack was born, I got that job. But over time, I was still doing freelance on the side, and it kept growing and growing to where I was doing freelance work, working at Liberty, and my income was equal from each. The same, I was getting paid a good amount from Liberty and then the same amount in 20 hours a week. As freelance, I'm working 60 hours, but I'm making the same in 40 and 20. And so I was like, I needed to make a choice at that point because then my daughter was born. And I was like, okay, I really want to be working less. I know 60 hours a week isn't that much to what most people do, but to me, I wanted my standard as I was raising kids to be at 40 hours a week. I didn't want to do more. Once again, looking at all these mistakes I had seen and kind of experienced firsthand, I was like, need to start a business that has low overhead. It needs to be very organized. I need to make sure everything is done, above board. I need to make sure I'm not working more than 40 hours a week. So I kind of was like, at Liberty, I think there's a lot of great people I worked with and stuff. But when you're in a big corporation, you don't usually get to choose the tools that you work with. You don't get to choose the team you work with. And I really wanted to do the best work that I could. And so I wanted to create my own team. I wanted to pick all the tools that I use. I wanted to create my own processes because I just knew how much was inefficient about the way we did things. And so that's something I think I learned from Liberty was how to lead a team and also how not to make things inefficient or like basically how things can become so inefficient in a big company and how to try to, as you're building a company, try to avoid becoming bogged down with too much of that inefficiency. So anyways, at that point, I kind of had to make that choice of, all right, between, my 40 hours a week of a solid job or 20 hours of like, I hope I get this work, And so I kind of did a test for myself. First of all, for a year, I started my company brand, launched my website. And for a year, I did side work as the company Knapsack. I started that in 2012. And then in 2013, I basically did a test of like, all right, I want to do this full time. I want to do this, as my official, company and go all in. And so I decided I would test for 3 months. And so I created myself a routine of what tasks I would do every day and like every week for 3 months. And like, if this generates X revenue consistently for 3 months, then I will leave my full-time job and go into this. And so I set that test for myself. And I knew that basically, hey, if I can make what we need to live on in 20 hours a week instead of 40 hours a week at my other job, I knew my income would drop a little bit at first when I started if I only did the 20 hours a week. But I was like, if I can do twice as much work, I could make even more than I am with both right now, So I basically did a test for 3 months. And then when I succeeded, like Hannah and I talked about, like, all right, we're doing it. We're going all in. And kudos to her for being on board with that. Because I think, a lot of spouses would feel kind of worried about if there's sole income is coming from one person and you're leaving a job where you've got health insurance, you've got, everything built in that you need to, and you're going out on your own, and you have 2 young kids. But Hannah 100% believed in me the whole time, and not in an unwise way, but in a very supportive and reassuring way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It wasn't like, oh, sure, whatever you think. Like she didn't care, but it was like she trusted me, and she also just was helpful along the whole way, like helping me make decisions. I mean, she even helped come up with a name for my company. I was going to name it like Backpack or something, and Knapsack's like, way cooler.
Nah, that's stupid, Ben.
Yeah, that sounds exactly like her. She would
I
tell
know
me if
you
it was
wish
dumb,
you had a backpack because you never went to real school, but you should not name
you love
your
Boy Scouts
company
so
that.
much. Yeah. So
were your parents pretty supportive of you, with like starting a business and being an entrepreneur and stuff like that?
Yeah, for sure. They were. Yeah. They've always been supportive of that for sure.
Yeah, that's good. That's cool. I mean, that just gives you more confidence, with when people that you love and respect, around you, they, encourage you or, push you. I think that's really, and it's very interesting. I was just thinking about how like, so Knapsacks, like you officially jumped off and launched 2014. Yeah.
2013, yep.
Because, Squarespace is what brought us together.
Yep.
All those years ago. And I met you in, I believe, 2015 is when you and I met. And so it's funny to think all the way back then, I just remember and so you'd only been around for 2 years.
Yep.
If that, year and a half or so, whatever it was. But I just remember my first encounter with you in Knapsack, now 6.5 years ago, whatever it was. You were just so like polished as far as even the systems and processes that you had in place back then. And so, yeah, it just goes to show that like you kind of took all these lessons that you learned before you started your business and kind of were ready to go out of the gate to just be successul, which I think is pretty awesome.
Yeah, it might seem that way. And I think that's true. I definitely did learn a lot of stuff from that. But man, I honestly think the success of my business is me working around all my faults. Like I feel like I have so many faults and downsides to my personality that I feel like I was eventually able to figure out what those were and build things around those problems I have in order to make me more successful. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like basically, like for example, like Joy on our team, she is a very consistent person and she is very methodical. I am kind of the opposite of that. I'm like, I want to go all in and work so hard on one project for as long as I can and drop everything else. But she's the one that like keeps the thing, okay, every day we'll do the same thing over and over. And I'm like, yeah, but what about this? Let's do this thing. Let's do this thing. And so finding somebody that balances out your personality can be super helpful. I think my whole problem turning in homework, I literally created a system in my business where we would always schedule a meeting with our client, ahead of time. Like, okay, cool. This will be due this day and I will show it to you on video chat on this day. And so like, in a weird way, like my whole entire process of doing websites live or video chat is like partially accountability originally when I was first doing it, because I knew I would do it when I'm live with the person and I would be all in and they would be all in. And I don't have to worry that I'm not going to get it to them because I'm doing it with them live. So it's like a weird weakness that I have that created a unique kind of cool thing because I just figured out how to get around my weaknesses. Because I just feel like I have so many of those, but I feel like I've gotten to the point where I was okay with realizing that and like admitting it to myself that I wasn't that great at a lot of things. And so to me, I feel like also I'm fairly like, I can be kind of a lazy person sometimes in my opinion. And so what I try to do is create these routines for myself that I know, like if I follow this routine, I will be successful. And so I have to do the work up front to create routines and create systems. And so my business, it is very polished and very systematic and creates great results for people and people love it. But it's because of me overcoming, because I have this vision of it has to be great, but I can't do it with my own self-discipline. I have to create systems to make it work. And so the cool thing is that because of that, it's helped my employees and team also have that framework in place for them to keep them on track, and they don't have to, it's not all brute force and all grit to make something successful. We have a framework and everything to make it work. So, I mean, to me, it's just like, that's the number one thing that's helped me the most is just finding my own weaknesses and the other downfalls I've seen and try to just figure out a way around them, just get creative and start troubleshooting and figuring out a way around your own personality flaws and stuff like that.
Yeah. I love that. I think that's fantastic. And I think, you have so much success in your life because of that. And so Man, this has been a fantastic conversation. I hope if you're listening that you enjoyed it and you learned something. My 3 takeaways from this are...
Oh, you got takeaways?
Yeah,
What a twist.
I know, man. I got the takeaways today. I'm not that great at taking notes because I never, went to college. But my first takeaway is create space for creativity. That sometimes being bored actually can benefit you and push you into developing yourself and being creative. My second one is set appropriate expectations, or look at a situation and figure out how you can best design it in order to take full advantage of it. And then my third one is build things around your faults. I think this is really good and has also benefited me, is finding out, like, seeing where things bottleneck and things where the ball gets dropped. And then, okay, how do we create a system or a process around that? And most likely, in my case, is removing me from a system or a process, right? It's like, okay, I'm really good at this one thing. Now I'm going to do that. And then I need to pass this hot potato off to somebody else so that they can really execute it at a high level.
I love it.
And Ben, our action item, if you could tell our listeners one thing or share a thought or idea as far as success in life and all those other kind of things, what would you share?
I would just say be intentional. Think about where you really want to be in the future, and when you make your decisions, try to spend a little bit of time each day thinking about where you want to be and start writing down your thoughts. If I could recommend one book that I really has changed my life recently, I would recommend going out and reading The Road Less Stupid. It's really helped me be less stupid.
Yeah. It's fantastic. I love that. All right. Hey, guys, go to thefridayhabit.com to find show notes for this episode. There you can also find links to our websites and ways to get in touch. At the bottom of the page, you can download our guide to the Friday Habit System that will show you how to set aside one day each week to work on your business instead of in your business.
And if you enjoy this episode, please subscribe and leave us a review in the Apple Podcast app. If you have a question or a topic you'd like us to cover, don't forget to record us a quick voice memo and email it to hello@thefridayhabit.com.
That's right. And until next time, live every day like it's Friday.